On the night everyone believed a beloved star simply died, the cameras did not fail. The timeline did. For months, audiences around the world accepted a polished, orderly narrative about how Yu Menglong's final evening unfolded. Official statements described an isolated incident, a tragic misstep, and a night that ended too quickly to question. Yet the curated calm surrounding the case fractured when a single anonymous message surfaced online. It appeared without warning, without context, and without any attempt at persuasion. It delivered only one sentence: "The investigation is not over." What they found changes everything. Within minutes, the gentle rhythm of comment sections dissolved into a storm. Threads multiplied, reposts accelerated, and thousands of viewers attempted to trace the origin of the message. What they found instead was a silence too heavy to dismiss. According to community analysts, the post vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only digital echoes of panic. But behind the glamour and the excuses, what mechanisms are really driving this crisis? We will analyze every detail, from the initial mistakes to the irreversible damage, to see how the entertainment world works and how an icon is redefined. Before this night became a battlefield of theories, Yu Menglong represented a different kind of stardom. His presence carried a calm elegance, a deliberate warmth, and an effortless charm that made him one of the most sought-after faces of romantic cinema. Industry reports described him as reliable, disciplined, and remarkably private. Fans saw in him a sense of sincerity that felt rare, even fragile, in an environment built on spectacle. That is why the first explanation of his death felt, to many, too convenient, too quiet, too complete. Everything changed when a 9-minute file appeared on a niche forum. It had no title, no tags, and no visible author. It existed for exactly 9 minutes, no more and no less. According to digital archivists who captured fragments of it, the file revealed a disturbing range of material: mismatched timestamps, private communications, incomplete metadata from deleted video files, and one sentence that startled even the most skeptical viewers. The timeline is wrong. People froze. They enlarged the screenshot. They compared pixels. Some claimed the phrase carried the weight of a warning rather than an error message. Others argued that the statement implied intentional adjustment. Within an hour, the file was wiped so thoroughly that attempts to re-download it produced not a deletion notice, but an absence. According to multiple analysts, this type of disappearance is not common. A missing file can be retrieved. A deleted file leaves residue. This one left nothing. Erased, not removed. More than anything else, this unexplained void pushed viewers back to a question no official report had ever addressed. What exactly happened in the hours before Yu Menglong stepped onto the rooftop of that building? Why did several unrelated digital systems fail at the same time? And why did early witnesses report details that never appeared in the public summary? As debates intensified, a pattern emerged. Every credible discussion, every technical breakdown, every eyewitness recollection pointed toward a single fracture in the narrative. A hollow space that none of the reports had acknowledged and none of the authorities had clarified. As one investigator later described it, the first crack in the perfect story was not a rumor. It was a missing 5 hours that no one could explain. The black hole in the timeline. The first wave of confusion did not rise from a dramatic revelation, nor from a whistleblower stepping into the light. It began with silence, the kind that sits beneath an otherwise ordinary narrative. No alarms rang, no officials contradicted themselves publicly, and no witness came forward with a dramatic reversal. Instead, subtle inconsistencies appeared like hairline fractures along the surface of a flawless mask. They were quiet, almost ignorable, until they accumulated. And when they did, the story surrounding Yu Menglong's final night no longer felt linear. It felt edited. The earliest questions surfaced when dedicated fans attempted to reconstruct the hours leading up to the incident. What they discovered was not a disagreement in testimony or a minor clerical oversight. It was an absence. Logs from the building's internal systems, usually precise to the second, displayed gaps. CCTV feeds within a 500-meter radius showed simultaneous malfunctions. Access records overlapped inexplicably, and several routine security timestamps appeared to have been overwritten, as though someone had pressed a reset button on only the moments that mattered most. It was during this stage that 4 independent figures, each from entirely different backgrounds, converged on the same conclusion. They did not work together at first. They did not even know of each other. Yet their findings aligned so closely that collaboration became unavoidable. The first was SpectreByte, a data analyst known within niche online spaces for identifying deepfake inconsistencies and detecting manipulated metadata. According to his breakdown, the flaws in the official timeline were not accidental. They formed a pattern of omissions that could not be explained by system fatigue or operator error. He called it the black hole in the timeline, a term that quickly spread across every discussion thread. The second was Lian Li, a journalist whose career had once been derailed after she exposed unethical management practices within the entertainment industry. Her experience with suppressed information allowed her to notice something others overlooked. Several early statements from minor witnesses disappeared from public archives within days. According to her notes, some of these statements referenced voices, shadows, or unfamiliar figures near restricted areas of the building. Yet none of these accounts appeared in the official summary. The third was an anonymous legal specialist known only as the archivist. With a background rumored to involve compliance auditing for major corporations, the archivist quietly collected internal documents, policy memos, and procedural notes that appeared relevant to the case. The archivist's contribution was not dramatic, but devastatingly precise. Several pages within the administrative report had been revised more than once, yet no revision history was logged. The fourth was Mara Lin, a long-term fan who had painstakingly documented every interview, live stream, and behind-the-scenes moment in Yu Menglong's public life. Her role seemed small at first, until she discovered something unusual in an old recording. The audio contained a brief encrypted fragment at the end, recoverable only through reconstruction. In that recovered whisper, Yu Menglong said, "If the shadows ever come back, I will send the message." Check the timeline. Years earlier, no one had understood it. Now it sounded hauntingly deliberate. The coalition formed almost naturally, its purpose simple: rebuild the timeline without relying on the official version. They began with the building itself. Though the incident had occurred in a residential tower, its infrastructure was unusually complex. Maintenance access points connected multiple floors. Several hallways lacked visible cameras. And according to one housekeeper who later spoke privately, she heard 2 voices on the night in question, and witnessed a man in a dark coat leaving through the service exit. She claimed he paused only to say, "No cameras here." Good. Her statement, however, was never included in the public report. As these independent efforts progressed, each expert reached the same realization. The inconsistencies did not merely hint at a gap. They outlined 1. A span of roughly 5 hours in which nearly every digital record was corrupted, disabled, or erased. Not partially, completely. SpectreByte described it with clinical precision. A missing timestamp is an error. A missing 5 hours is a strategy. His analysis suggested that multiple systems, CCTV, access logs, communication networks, were disrupted in concert. To him, this was not the aftermath of a malfunction. It was the signature of an intervention. The more evidence they gathered, the less plausible the official timeline appeared. Witnesses had been redirected. Digital artifacts had been overwritten. Even archived fan interactions from months earlier had been quietly edited or removed. Every discovery pointed toward the same void, the same silent region of the night that refused to align with any official account. The deeper they dug into those 5 missing hours, the more it felt as if someone had not just edited the night, but surgically removed an entire chapter of Yu Menglong's life. When the internet rewrites a death. What followed the earliest discoveries was not quiet analysis or cautious skepticism. It was an explosion. Once the first fragments of the 9-minute file began circulating, the online world shifted into a new state, one defined by urgency, obsession, and a sense of collective purpose. What had once been a contained tragedy transformed into a public investigation that grew by the hour. Every platform, from short-form video sites to long-form discussion boards, became an archive of theories, breakdowns, and reconstructed timelines. It began with a single hashtag, then 2, then dozens. According to trend analysts, more than 5 million users engaged with variations of "reveal the real timeline" within 48 hours. Influencers dissected every detail in front of their audiences. Digital hobbyists attempted to replicate the anomalies shown in the leak. Some users even built interactive models of the building, using floor plans and access points proposed by online investigators. The conversation no longer revolved around what happened, but why the official account omitted so many critical components. One of the earliest catalysts for the public escalation was the appearance of satellite imagery that circulated among independent journalists. The images, reportedly sent by an anonymous figure known only as Nightwatcher, showed subtle but unmistakable activity near the rooftop during the interval before the recorded time of the incident. The lights flickered in a pattern that did not match typical maintenance cycles. A vehicle without visible plates approached the loading zone with its headlights off, and a faint silhouette, barely distinguishable but undeniably present, stood near the rooftop's access point. These images did not confirm wrongdoing, but they widened the gap between the official narrative and the emerging pattern. Viewers reflected on the troubling possibility. If movement occurred before the documented timeline, then the foundation of the report was compromised. Tension increased further when a 21-second corridor clip surfaced on a closed forum. The footage was grainy, monochrome, and silent, yet its impact was immediate. The fixed angle captured a dim hallway with an elevator at the far end. At 9 seconds, 2 elongated shadows appeared on the floor, although no figures entered the frame. At 14 seconds, the elevator doors opened without any visible trigger. At 16 seconds, a shape leaned forward into the elevator and then vanished, not stepping away, not fading, but disappearing abruptly, as if the recording had lost a sequence of frames. Digital analysts reviewed the footage with caution, refusing to draw premature conclusions. However, several noted an unusual inconsistency. The shadows did not align with the hallway's lighting. The reflections on the elevator's metallic surface suggested an object or figure outside the camera's field of view, yet the shape did not correspond to any recognizable silhouette. For many viewers, the clip became the symbolic heart of the mystery, raising questions that no official summary addressed. The rapid escalation placed significant pressure on public authorities. Within days, spokespersons were compelled to acknowledge unresolved inconsistencies and new digital evidence under evaluation. These admissions were brief, carefully worded, and avoided any implication of misconduct. Still, the response ignited an even larger wave of speculation. If new evidence existed, why had it not been included in the first report? Why were certain early statements missing? And why did multiple devices fail across the same window of time? It was during this phase that the archivist uncovered a memo containing a single overlooked footnote. The line read, "Additional witness interview sealed per request of higher officials." Through persistent analysis, the sealed page was eventually reconstructed. It described a male witness who reported hearing an argument and seeing a tall man in a long dark coat entering through the service door. Most strikingly, the witness claimed the man was accompanied by a smaller hooded figure. This second individual appeared nowhere in the public documents. Around the same time, SpectreByte mapped the blackout zone using points of digital failure, TV outages, corrupted logs, and Wi-Fi disruptions. The anomalies formed a perfect ring around the building. At the center of the ring lay the rooftop access, the elevator shaft, and the service exit. According to SpectreByte, such precision was characteristic of a coordinated digital suppression mechanism rather than a random collapse. As public interest surged, an internal investigative update was leaked. The document, though intended for restricted circulation, listed a series of marked conclusions: footage intentionally destroyed, digital manipulation by an unknown party, presence of a second unidentified individual, signs of operational coordination, and evidence suggesting premeditation. The final point stated that the incident was no longer being treated as accidental. The admission reverberated through the entire discussion. Viewers no longer asked whether something was missing from the official story. They asked how much had been removed. For the first time, the word hanging over every fan theory escaped an official document. Someone had planned for this night long before Yu Menglong ever stepped onto that roof. The man in the long coat. As the digital frenzy intensified, all roads began to point toward a single figure who had drifted through the narrative like a shadow that refused to sharpen. He was not part of the original report. He was not referenced in any official statement. Yet he appeared repeatedly in leaked footage, eyewitness fragments, corrupted reflections, and speculative reconstructions. To most viewers, he quickly became known simply as the man in the long dark coat. His presence was never central in any frame, never clear enough to confirm identity, but always positioned at the precise intersections where the timeline fractured. The breakthrough emerged when SpectreByte isolated a corrupted CCTV file that every system had classified as empty. According to his technical notes, the footage had been overwritten multiple times, yet faint structural data suggested that several frames might still exist beneath the compression. After 13 hours of extraction, he uncovered 3 seconds of video that had survived the blackout. Those 3 seconds altered the context of everything. The recovered footage began with pure darkness for slightly more than 1 second. Then, abruptly, the lens captured a gloved hand reaching toward the camera. The motion was steady, deliberate, and controlled. At 2.247 seconds, the hand blocked part of the frame. At 2.912 seconds, the glass cracked in a thin spiderweb fracture. At exactly 3 seconds, the file cut off permanently. The timestamp placed the sequence squarely within the 5-hour blackout period, suggesting that the camera had been fully operational until the moment it was manually disabled. For investigators, this was the first definitive indication that the blackout was not an electrical failure or software malfunction. It was a physical intervention carried out with intent. Someone had approached the camera, neutralized it, and ensured that the system registered nothing afterward. And in the outline of the glove and the posture of the arm, analysts recognized the same distinctive silhouette seen in reflections from earlier images. Meanwhile, the archivist uncovered an internal security logbook from a locker room on the 17th floor. One date had been circled in red, the night before the incident. Under it, written in hasty but legible handwriting, were the words, "Meeting on rooftop, midnight." When cross-referenced, the handwriting matched that of a security officer who resigned the following day. Investigators attempting to follow his trail found an abandoned apartment, an inactive bank account, and a phone wiped beyond recovery. According to internal sources, he had vanished before formal questioning could begin. Additional fragments appeared from unrelated sources. A discarded phone, once dismissed as irrelevant, contained an unsent draft message created moments before the blackout window. Its reconstructed text read, "If you get this, they are already here. Do not believe anything released tomorrow." The truth is in the gaps. The phone had never transmitted the message. Yet the phrasing mirrored the encrypted audio fragment discovered by Mara Lin from one of Yu Menglong's earlier live streams. This alignment deepened the concern that the incident did not emerge in isolation, but was part of a longer chain of events that had gone unnoticed. Motion analysis conducted by SpectreByte added another dimension. The man in the long coat never moved unpredictably. His pace was measured, his direction purposeful. He avoided every camera that remained functional, weaving through blind spots with the ease of someone who understood the architecture intimately. He never used the main halls. He never lingered. He positioned himself near service routes, maintenance pathways, and elevator control shafts. These were areas typically accessed only by staff or contracted specialists. According to SpectreByte, his movements resembled the operational pattern of someone trained in surveillance, access control, and evasive navigation. Yet the most unsettling discovery involved the second figure mentioned by the sealed witness. The smaller hooded individual appeared briefly in the corridor clip as an inconsistent shadow and then vanished entirely from the timeline. No exit record existed. No camera captured a departure. Analysts proposed multiple possibilities: a lookout, a partner, a courier, or someone unaware that they were being followed. Still, one detail stood unresolved. The second figure never reappeared in any digital record. At the center of all theories was the same question: what did the man in the long coat carry? In one reflection, faint but perceptible, a small metallic glint appeared near his hand. It was not part of the elevator, nor of the lighting fixtures. Whatever the object was, he shielded it closely and took it with him when he exited through the service door. As the timeline reconstruction neared completion, a consensus formed among independent investigators. The man in the long coat had not entered the building by accident, nor had he moved through it without purpose. His timing, his path, and his final disappearance aligned too precisely with the moment the digital systems collapsed. Because until the world knows why he was there, in the exact minute the timeline collapsed, this story can never truly be over. Aftermath, when a timeline becomes a battlefield. In the weeks following the surge of independent findings, the case reached a state that no official briefing could contain. Analysts, journalists, fans, and digital archivists had assembled a mosaic so complex that even its missing pieces formed narratives of their own. What remained after the noise settled was not a single conclusion, but a landscape shaped by contradictions, silences, and fragments of evidence that resisted simplification. The story of Yu Menglong's final night no longer resembled a linear account of an isolated tragedy. It had become an examination of how information behaves when truth is no longer a fixed point, but a moving target. The aftermath revealed something unusual about the public response. Instead of fading, the conversation expanded into broader reflections on how modern fame intertwines with data, surveillance, and narrative control. Fans expressed grief in different forms. Some demanded closure, others searched relentlessly for missing links, and many questioned how a single night could contain so many blind spots. According to cultural commentators, the persistence of these questions reflected a deeper concern. When systems designed to preserve clarity produce only ambiguity, the audience begins to wonder whether the uncertainty itself was constructed. Agencies connected to the building reinforced their security protocols, implementing stricter archiving policies and more transparent digital monitoring procedures. Several organizations released statements insisting that no deliberate suppression occurred, yet none were able to reconcile the precise failures identified by independent analysts. The discrepancy between official reassurance and technical inconsistency created a lingering tension that shaped every subsequent discussion. Even those who preferred the original explanation found themselves unable to dismiss the evidence of targeted disruption. For many, the emotional impact lay not in the unanswered questions, but in the recognition that these questions existed at all. Yu Menglong had been admired for his quiet presence and understated grace, qualities that made his public image feel stable and sincere. The shift from that serene persona to a labyrinth of speculation created a collective sense of dissonance. According to several media studies experts, this transformation illustrated how quickly a personal narrative can be overtaken by competing interpretations once digital silence enters a timeline. Yet within the uncertainty, one clear lesson emerged. The integrity of a story depends not on how much information is revealed, but on what is withheld. Missing data can speak louder than recorded facts. Overwritten logs can shape perception more decisively than any statement. And a single figure moving at the edge of a frame can redirect an entire investigation. As one analyst observed, in the digital age, a gap is never empty. It always contains the possibility of another truth. This is why viewers continued to revisit the case, examining each angle, each timestamp, and each unexplained detail as though the night might eventually reveal itself. But every reconstruction, no matter how thorough, returned to the same unresolved point, the collapse of the timeline. The moment where clarity broke apart and the narrative entered territory no official version could fully map. In the end, the case left the world with a final, enduring question. It was not about CCTV outages or encrypted fragments. It was not about shadows in corridors or unidentified figures on rooftops. It was about the architecture of truth itself and who possesses the authority to shape it. In the end, the real mystery is not how Yu Menglong died, but who had the power to decide which parts of his final night the world was allowed to remember.